Well, hello. So, no, there we go. Hello. Sorry, guys, what am I supposed to do here? We're Caviar. I'm Sorcha Shepherd. I'm the managing director of Caviar. I am 5'7/8". I grew up in Australia, but I'm Irish, and I am wearing a slightly pajama top today because I'm feeling a little bit nervous, and it helps me breathe.
Hi guys, I'm Nisha. I'm an EP at Caviar. I'm 5'7", mixed race, Indian and English, from the northeast of England.
Hi, my name's Sachin Chande. I am 5'6", Indian male. I'm a production manager and producer at Caviar, and I've been at Caviar for 2 years.
I'm Samira. I'm a production assistant at Caviar. I'm 6 foot. I am of African descent, Sierra Leonean to be specific, and I've got braids, and I'm wearing a bright yellow jumpsuit.
Hi, my name is Princess Manduma. I'm the head of social media here at Caviar. I'm 5'5". I'm Congolese British, so of Black African descent. I'm wearing checkered pants, black bodysuit, and Doc Martens.
So, we work at Caviar, as we've all said. We are a production company. We create commercial content, music videos, and we have just created our first feature film, which Nisha produced. Thank you for joining us here today. We're super excited to be here to host our panel talk, Inform and Inspire, Unlocking the Industry for the Next Generation. I'm simply a compere here today because our panel has been developed with the next generation of creatives, crews, and producers in mind. So we thought, who better to advise on this and answer any burning questions you have than the next generation of creatives, crew, and producers. As you can see on stage, on our slide behind us, we have 4 topics we're going to be talking around. They will focus on 4 aspects that our panel will be giving their opinions on. And then we will have an open Q&A towards the end where you're welcome to ask my team any questions or opinions that you feel may help in your journey into these sectors. Or anything that you've just wanted to ask someone who is closer in age to you, possibly instead of someone like me, because I'm not going to tell you my age, but I am old. During our discussion, you will see some references up behind us on this screen. They're resources that myself and my team have put together that we feel could be valuable to all of you. So whilst they're up there, please feel free to take photos of them and then look at them after our panel. So, Section 1, which way? Pathways into the industry. Let's get started with Samira. How did you get into the industry?
So when I was younger, I wanted to act, but once I got to sixth form, I was kind of like put off and told like not to go to like acting school at such a young age. So I went to uni and studied English and American Studies. I was always really great at English. It was one of my interests and something that I always did well in. I then graduated in 2019, left uni, being told that the world was my oyster and all these doors would open up. But unfortunately, COVID struck, so I kind of lost all of that momentum of like wanting to get into the working industry. So I then had just a year of not doing much, but also having lots of time on my hands. So my best friend, her sister, was an up-and-coming director called Lainey Richardson. She was filming something really, really small during lockdown. It was a very small crew. Again, we weren't really sure how to sort of navigate COVID and filming, so it was a very small and intimate crew. And they just asked me if I wanted to help out, so I went on as a runner and production assistant. It was my very first time on set. I went around making sure everyone was sanitizing every hour. I was bringing the cast on and off set. And within that time, just being on that shoot, I was able to meet different crew members and ask loads of questions like, what does the camera do and why do we have lighting? And all these new experiences that I'd never had before. I got in pretty well with the first assistant director on that job. We got along really well, and she then brought me onto another shoot that she was working on 2 weeks later. And after that, it just kind of spiraled where I was working with her a lot. But then anytime I had an opportunity to be on set, I would network with other crew members, with the producers, and just started networking. And it kind of just spiraled from there. So one shoot led to another. 3 years later, I'm at Caviar as a production assistant.
Thank you, Sammy, and we love having you here. Sorry, that sounded really sarcastic. Sammy knows that I mean it completely.
It didn't.
Nish, why did you get into the creative sector?
I think, well, probably like a lot of people around on the sofa or in the audience, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at first or exactly how I would, kind of sort of it happened by accident rather than by design. I mentioned I grew up in the Northeast, so I didn't really know much about production. My family quite traditional in the fact that they were like, be a teacher, be a doctor. Tried the medical A-levels, biology, chemistry didn't go so well, but English and psychology and business were better. So went to university, studied English, always loved telling stories and looking at characters and the ways to build stories and worlds, and I thought this is really interesting. And so I studied that, graduated from university, came for an interview, took the first job that I was offered in London, and it was in account management in post-production. And very quickly I realized that I didn't necessarily, I wanted to be as close to the making of the thing as possible. So I kind of loved the element of like spreadsheets and organizational elements of producing, but also the creativity of it. So I kind of moved over that way. And I guess why I wanted to work in the creative sector and why I love it is just the ability to kind of receive a brief, create a story, and develop something from end to end, whether it's like 30 seconds or 2 minutes, or now with the feature film, kind of develop something and make something as a producer and, oversee every angle of it, which is what I loved about it. So, yeah.
Okay, Nish, thank you. Princess, tell us about your pathway into the industry.
Of course. So I've been involved with the creative industry for a number of years now, because prior to working as the head of social media here at Caviar, I worked as a production assistant at an ad agency for a while. And before that, I was also working as a social media manager for a couple of startups in the tech and finance space. And then also in terms of my studying, I went to study a degree in media communications, and then also did 2 years at vocational college studying film and media production. So from there, I got to learn about kind of filmmaking, documentary making, radio production, and photography, which really kind of trained me in the disciplines that and created the skill set that I have today. But I always say that my main way that I got into the creative industry started years before that, mainly through my writing. I've always been a massive fan of creative writing, from creating short stories to then going on to write articles for my school and college. But it was only kind of once I discovered screenplays and writing for television that really my love of the creative industry and wanting to get into the world of production kind of sparked from there. And one of the main ways I kind of got into the industry from my love of screenwriting was mainly then chasing up work experience at the companies that I wanted to work at. So at the time, that was working for MTV and Channel 5, because I kind of consumed a lot of content from them, and I was really interested in kind of the work that they were putting out. And it was something as simple as kind of spending about a couple of years just chasing them every time I was off school, asking if I could do free work experience, and just working on my portfolio and being able to connect and network with the people there. And those placements were so invaluable to me because I got to network with amazing people in the industry who later went on to kind of give me recommendations for schemes I went out for, and then also whenever I was writing a new script, or for example, they could kind of review my work and give me critique, which made me a better writer as well. But in terms of then building up my social media skills, which I kind of got into post-pandemic because, again, I was fresh out of uni, and because I'd done quite a broad degree, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was good at social media, so I wanted to use my writing and kind of transfer it into that space and see how it could go. So the two main things I did was kind of just practicing writing social media posts. As maybe tedious as it sounds, it's so helpful to be able to do something as simple as, if you have a perfume that you like or a makeup product that you like, and just being able to be like, how would I market this? How, if I work for this brand, how would I be able to create their brand voice? How would I want that brand to communicate to me as a consumer? And then also being able to then take that writing and condense it for a number of different platforms. Because while in social media it's good to have a unified brand voice, it can also be really helpful to have in your arsenal the ability to kind of write short form. So if you're doing like a tweet or something, and then being able to kind of switch it up and produce video content for platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat, for example. And then the second thing I did, which I can't stress enough, is while I was at college, I was given the opportunity to create a project where I had to make a documentary about either a local business or a person in my life that really affected me. And I reached out to my local cinema and asked them if I could make a documentary about them on the craft of filmmaking and just their love of cinema and why all of the staff kind of got involved in it. and they gladly accepted, and it was wonderful. And I can't stress enough how an amazing experience it was, because making a documentary, especially a mini one, really condenses the production process and teaches you so many skills in one. So I learned how to kind of write interview questions, how to interview a subject, how to select a subject, and also find a story in a business or a person. And then equally also being able to then first shoot for the first time as a director and then writer, and then also edit my own content. And the beauty of it is, with documentary making or filmmaking, is you can get started with something as simple as the phone in your hand, and then, or like a camera lying around at home. And then from there, just get comfortable being both in front of the camera or behind the camera, whichever you decide to do. And then use all of your short films or work that you make and actually put that in your portfolio and your resume when you're going out for these work experience and placements, which then allows you to kind of get your foot in the door and kind of start your career in the creative industry. And then one last thing I just wanted to touch upon was the fact that I feel that social media is a really powerful tool that the creative industry sometimes overlooks, because in our industry we kind of still exist in a space where if you want to get a certain job or hear about a certain opportunity, it's still kind of done through word of mouth or personal recommendation, or being someone that has kind of a long-standing reputation in the industry, which can feel really closed off and not really accessible to people who want to get into the industry but don't have these links. So one of the amazing things that I love about Caviar is that our directors are always so open to talking about their work and sharing how they shot it, edited it, and also talking about the different creative teams that they work with. So in my role here at Caviar, I always make sure that I'm posting about if they did a certain type of camera work or a type of editing technique, talking about exactly how they did it. So if anyone's curious about those techniques, for example, aspiring filmmakers, they can go away and research them, but also tagging the individual stylists, sparks, gaffers, producers, all the other key production members. So if there's anyone that you see when you're looking at our credits, you're like, oh, I actually wanted to learn more about being a production manager, you know exactly who to contact, and you can reach out and then get your first kind of contacts in the industry. And one last thing I always make sure we're doing as well is if any of our jobs are having like an open casting call, making sure that we're promoting it all over social media as well. So that kind of extends our application reach far to our kind of like worldwide audience as well. And then if you're kind of, you see that casting call and you're like, it's not really the role for me, but I still want to follow up with Caviar, I like the work that they do, you can reach out, get a hold of our contact email from that casting call, and then follow up down the line to see if we have any other jobs available, work experience, or placements available, like being a runner or an intern.
Thank you, Princess. Sach, how did you get into production, and what was the best resource you had?
So I think, to start with, I don't think there is a best resource. I think you should be using multiple avenues and sources to help you find work. Throughout my career, I've worked across the sector for different companies and different industries, and each of those I've got through a different avenue. So going from the beginning, I started off in theatre, so I've always kind of been involved within that creative space. But it wasn't until I got to uni that I studied theatre and film that I thought of having a career within the film and TV industry. My first job after graduating was freelance running at a post-production facility, and I got that job through cold calling, cold emailing, Facebook groups, Instagram pages. From there, I then moved on to, I moved on to become a post-production coordinator at a big broadcast facility. That job I got directly through the jobs board on the company's website. From there, I then realized I wanted a job in production, so I went and got more credits, freelance credits in production, which allowed me to then move to a sports media company, which I got through a third-party page, such as LinkedIn or Guardian. From there, I then moved to a corporate media company, which I got actually through a speculative email that I sent, and then they just randomly got in touch 6 months later and asked me to come in for an interview and gave me the job. And then I landed at Caviar, which I managed to get through the APA jobs board. So no way is the right way.
Thank you, Sach. So we're moving on to our next section, finding your place, roles in the creative sector. This is quite a fun section because we're going to talk about the roles that we didn't know about before we got into the industry and we think people should know about, because there are so many obscure roles in what we do. And it's hard sometimes to understand these roles without you kind of seeing something on screen. So behind me are job roles that we didn't know existed, that we want to share with you guys, and we're going to talk a little bit around these kind of obscure job roles, because the thing is about our industry is that there is something for pretty much everyone. You just have to kind of do a little bit of research and look into things and then find your place from there. So we are going to start with Nisha talking about location managing.
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, the what do you call that? The sheet before. The diagram before. It's just really useful in terms of just lining out that, I mean, it's not as binary as this, obviously, but just in terms of like, the first time I ever went onto a film set, I was like, wow, there are so many people here, there are so many roles, there are so many different things, and I was like, kind of like, what does everybody do? And I remember going up, somebody was like, can somebody move that light? And I was an account exec. I just went to move it, and the spark was like, don't you touch my, it's just like that element of like learning about the whole team of production, and then also the roles and responsibilities within that, who deals with who, and that's kind of what that showcases, I guess. And then I think for me, location manager, obviously, somebody who manages locations, yes, yeah, which makes sense, but I think it's not to be kind of underestimated, and I think what really inspired me to talk about this today was specifically the film, I keep talking about the film, that I just shot and produced, which we shot in 44 locations in 22 days, in 12 London boroughs, from kind of tiny flats in West London to big houses in South London to outdoor swimming spots. And the location manager was like, I'd never met anyone quite as inspirational in that moment. I mean, he saved us so many times, but it's this idea of someone they'll come in very early on, pre-production, obviously they read the script, there's location libraries, there's location scouts, but actually so much more than that. It's, okay, we need somebody who's really creative, who's really innovative, we're working on a small budget, but how do we bring this creative to life in terms of the location, but also how do we make that work from a budget perspective, kind of negotiating hard on budget, also negotiating hard on the time that we get there, in terms of being in the physical space, but then also, okay, we can't get that location, what else will work? And I think it's quite a multifaceted role where you're able to explore like creativity, innovation, but then also like logistics and just practicalities of shooting, So for me, it's a very interesting role that I think doesn't get enough attention, which is why I wanted to mention it today.
Agreed. And it's basically a great job role if you like going around and looking at places, which I think a lot of us do.
It's like right move, but multifaceted.
Sach, you're going to talk about practical SFX.
Yeah, so practical special effects was something I didn't realize was actually a role until I started working in the industry. And when I found out what they do, I was like, this is incredible what they do. And it's basically like they work in all sorts of fields. So like it might be model making, software development, installations, puppetry, just an array of different things. And I think the reason the role is quite interesting as well is because not only is it a very artistic role, it's also a very engineering and science-heavy role, which are obviously kind of almost two ends of the spectrum. Some examples I can think of would be like we were filming in a forest, and we had to make it really atmospheric. It had to be a really atmospheric shot. So how were we going to do that? So the special effects company we were working with, they built a rig with tubing going around the perimeter of where we were filming, and the shot was huge. So it was going like around this massive area of woods. And they built this rig, and they made a concoction of this smoke, fog, and they filled the whole place with this thick smog to make this like amazing shot, to make an amazing shot. And I was like, that's so cool. Another thing, for another project I've seen before, they built this machine that would drip water through, and they engineered it in a way that the droplets would fall in such a way that as it fell, it would create the logo of the brand live in camera. And I was like, this is incredible. I remember the first time I spoke to a special effects person, I was intrigued as to what they did. And the way he described it to me was basically he gets paid to make fake snow, blow up things, build stuff just to knock them down, mess around with wind machines, smoke machines. I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah, sounds like the perfect job for my children because they do that all the time. Thank you, Sach. So Princess is going to talk about director's representative or director's rep.
Yeah, so a director's rep or a director's representative is kind of responsible for looking after the director roster at a company, or if they're kind of representing individual directors as well. And you're responsible for making sure they kind of get their name in the right places, winning them work, and also just really shouting out about how amazing they are and pushing their skills to kind of go into new fields that they might not even know they can do. and just really being able to be good at talking to people and also being able to drive sales in terms of like winning the director work from prospective clients. I was really fascinated by this job because I heard about it when I was a production assistant at my last job, because we'd have a lot of directors' reps come in and try and win work for my agency. And I just really found it fascinating how passionate they were about their directors. They knew so much about their work inside and out. They could kind of tell us a bit more of like the life and heart behind why a director does what they do, how they kind of got into filmmaking. And it's just so much more different from just kind of emailing a company like a physical kind of reel, because you have like a rep who can kind of talk you through each of the work, bring it to life and kind of tell you cool facts about the shoot or like how difficult it was to achieve the shot, which I've always found so interesting. And one of the things I love most about it is that I believe almost, because I kind of didn't realize that directors needed reps to kind of get their work out there, because I always thought they kind of marketed themselves individually. One of the beautiful things is that you can work with a rep to kind of strategize and tell them what your goals are. So for example, if you're an inspiring filmmaker who wants to move into music videos, or you've only ever shot commercials but you want to make your first film, there are so many reps out there from all different sectors who can kind of get your name out there and connect you with the right people to make kind of your goals come true. And one of the beautiful things about it as well is that if you're someone who had never even heard of the role before like me, but you're kind of good at talking to people and you're passionate about films, TV shows, adverts, and you also are able to think critically and explain why exactly you like this, then I would honestly urge you to kind of consider being a rep, because it's one of those roles where you get to meet so many new people you get to sometimes travel and go to different companies around the world and kind of market your work, market your directors to them, and really just create really good, strong bonds with these directors and help kind of watch them grow, and also make a name for yourself within the industry and kind of be that go-to person that if an agency needs a director, they know that they can contact you and be like, okay, this person showed me an amazing body of work from this director, they're exactly who I want. Or they'll kind of allow you to start building a business relationship with them where you can they can start going to you for exclusive directors for certain projects. So I feel like there's a lot of career progression within being a rep, and yeah, it's definitely a job that if you like people and like talking to people, I think you'd really thrive there.
Absolutely. I was a rep for a time before I started Caviar, and it's a very satisfying job. This is actually probably my favorite one to talk about because it's quite random for people that don't know about it. Samira is going to talk about a DIT or a DIT.
So hopefully I do it justice. Most of the time on set, if I'm not running around doing PA stuff, I'm talking to the DIT and just learning really cool stuff about what they do. So it stands for Digital Imaging Technician. And one of the core and simplest reasons why we need a DIT on set is to make sure that all the footage we are shooting is recorded. After spending, a big budget on a shoot, it'd be a shame if you weren't actually capturing that image. But also making sure all the footage is backed up onto 2 separate hard drives. And then this is then sent off to the editor. So beforehand, the editors will have a list of a specific way they want the footage to be named, like whether that be file names or how it's processed. The DIT has a very close relationship with the camera team. So before we actually start shooting, they'll find out how many cameras we're filming with. It could be 1, it could be 6, but all of that determines how much footage we'll have and what the size of the hard drive we'll need. They'll figure out what kind of camera we're shooting on, the aspect ratio, so whether we're shooting for something that's going on a widescreen or whether it's something that's going to be viewed on a phone. So yeah, they have a really great relationship with the camera department. At the start of the day, they will check the settings on the camera, make sure they know the shutter speed, the frames per second. They'll also really communicate with the director of photography. So some DPs will have a LUT, which is essentially almost like a filter, but it's a filter they've created to reflect the tone, the color, or a certain feel they want from their work. So you could watch a piece of film and be like, oh my goodness, that looks like Olan Colladi's work, or that's Jamie Ackroyd. They're both different DPs, but it's almost like their own filter that represents their work. So a DIT would have this uploaded onto their system. They normally work from 2 screens at their own desk, sometimes in like a little black tent away from everyone, just so they can focus on what they're doing. But they will upload this LUT onto their computer. So as we're shooting, you can kind of see what it would look like in the end piece, like the footage. Another great thing they do is quality control. They can make small changes as we're filming, so whether that be overexposure or underexposure or live color grading, they could do all of that kind of on set. And what's also great is that they're one of the best tools that a director of photography can have in terms of trying to get a certain look and feel from the footage, but also they can make suggestions about how stuff looks. Like maybe the last shot you took had a kind of like orangey feel, or maybe there was a lot of shadows, and just making sure that all the footage you shoot is consistent. But yeah, it's a really cool job. If you ever get the opportunity to be on set, I definitely recommend talking to a DIP, because you'll learn so much.
Absolutely.
That's where you've been.
Yeah. Samira just spoke about one of our favorite DOPs as well. There are many amazing DOPs, but Olin Kaladi is phenomenal. If you don't know his work, please go and check it out, because he's amazing. And he's just shot our feature, so yay. So we are now coming to a very exciting and important section, Be the Change, supporting a more diverse and inclusive sector. So, Princess, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about the amount of diversity we currently have in our industry, please?
Of course. So personally, I feel like on one hand, in the last few years, I feel like we've made some brilliant strides in the kind of amount of access schemes, programs, scholarships, and also grants that are slowly becoming available to help people from disadvantaged backgrounds, people from ethnic minorities, and also people with disabilities kind of get their foot in the door in the industry, network with the right kind of people, and also get that key work experience they need to bolster their resume to start kind of getting into the industry and getting on jobs. However, I do feel like on the other hand, there is still a massive disparity between getting people from getting those people from those backgrounds into more senior roles, like being executive producers, directors, and creative directors, because I feel like it's in these senior roles where people have the most autonomy and also kind of creative freedom to be able to decide who gets to be involved in a project, all the way down to which kind of directors even get to pitch on it, bid for it, and just ensuring that that diversity is kind of being represented authentically, both on screen as well as behind the camera. I feel like currently in a lot of these kind of creative rooms and also in a lot of these senior roles, that diversity is sadly still being viewed as kind of a bit of an afterthought, or kind of a box that you can kind of check off down the line and kind of come to later, when in reality I feel like it is one of the first major factors that need to be discussed and openly talked about when creating a project, when crewing up and deciding who gets to be involved in it. And I feel like there needs to be a lot more equal opportunities to allow people of these backgrounds that I mentioned before to kind of get their voice and be able to kind of step into these roles, because they have so much ingenious knowledge and also experience from their own lives that they can kind of bring to these roles, and they can also ensure that we're maintaining just being culturally sensitive, like throughout all of our projects, bringing in new voices that haven't really been able to have an opportunity to be on set, and giving people their first kind of opportunity and step in the door, which is so needed in order to kind of create more change and become more progressive as a creative industry.
Thank you, Princess. Samira, which resources have helped you most in your journey, especially in relation to diversity and inclusivity?
Lots of databases out there. So, for example, the Black British list, or the Hugh list, which was actually started up by a Black DOP called Joel Honeywell during lockdown. And it's got an array of different crew members from a range of different backgrounds. So whether it's a DP, a production designer, to runners and even camera assistants, it's an amazing database with all their contacts, links to their pages, which has been really helpful. There's also the equity list, which was started up by 3 non-binary people who train people with like no experience in the camera department. So they do workshops, they teach you about the camera, they teach you about being a Steadicam operator, but also have the privilege of being on lots of different sets. The more sets I'm on, I kind of create my own personal database of people that I've worked with, and I think it's very important to, again, as Princess said, not have diversity and inclusion as an afterthought at the end. It really has to be integral from conception. So whether that's from the agency side, from when they're putting a brief together, it's about who you have in the room, and then when it comes to us as a production company, the director that we have, but also the cast that they choose, to the crew that they choose. Like, we all have a position to do better. We did a Tesco commercial to celebrate Eid, and the director, who's of mixed Indian and Persian heritage, made it very clear and important that he wanted, the crew as well to reflect the cast. And even in that brief, it's picking up on the different cultural sensitivities, which you can only have by having different people in the room. There's also other great resources like Trans on Screen, which finds queer people within the film industry. We use Just Runners, which is again another great resource for young people who've never really been on set before. It provides them with great opportunities and paid work. We recently just used Just Runners on one of our shoots, and they were honestly fantastic. And it doesn't matter your background, sexual orientation, disability, neurodiversity, or socioeconomic background, they kind of take everyone. So I think it is important to, when we're on set, make it a safe space for everyone. So whether it be finding accessibility with locations, that's a very important thing to consider. Also, if you've got someone who's potentially neurodiverse, how we can limit maybe stimulants and keeping the noise down. It's just about being really thoughtful from the beginning all the way to the end.
Absolutely. I love that, by the way, thank you. Sach, explain the importance of voicing your opinion.
So I honestly think that no matter what your role or your age, your voice and your opinion is important, especially when it comes to making a positive impact and a change, because everyone is coming from a different viewpoint and a different perspective. At Caviar, we have a really good culture. We're constantly reviewing and seeing how we can be more diverse, more inclusive, and that kind of builds a space where anyone in the company at any level, when we're crewing up for jobs, no matter how hectic or stressful the job is, anyone could say, Samira could say to me, look, HODs are leaning towards a certain way, a certain department is, can we be more diverse in this department? Can we push things? And by giving that platform for younger people and encouraging them to voice their opinions, will help the change happen quicker.
Thank you. And Nish, how are you going about making positive change? Personally, the whole world.
Yeah, it's just a bit of time, guys. No, I think what you said is I couldn't have really said it any better, but I think everyone has a responsibility to push this conversation, to drive for diversity and inclusion. And I think over the last few years, I have seen a change from when I came into the industry like 12, 13 years ago versus how it is now. But there is an awareness, but there's still so much work to do. And I think for me, when I was growing up in the Northeast, the industry doesn't really, as we know it here, doesn't exist there, so I didn't really know anything about it growing up. But also when I moved to London, I didn't really see many people in my immediate world where I was working that looked like me or sounded like me. I didn't actually know any other Geordies in the industry for a very long time. And as soon as I found one, I was like, oh, are you from South Shields? And they were like, no, but never mind. But yeah, so as I've got older and as an EP, I feel more and more responsibility to do more. So there's one small thing that I'm doing, which is connecting with my Geordie roots, even though I haven't lived there for, about 15 years. And an organisation called Shields, which is essentially there to encourage young people to learn about the industry, learn about production, and then I'm there as a mentor to support them, to give them access to the industry in London, but also to build connections with the North East. There's an opportunity for filming there. We've seen similar movements sort of in Manchester and Liverpool, but to kind of push production there. And I think the point of that really is that everyone can make a small change in some way if they so desire. So reach out to those organisations that you admire or the groups that you want to connect with and see how you can make a difference is kind of the point. So
I'm really excited about seeing what you do there.
Yeah.
It'd be lovely. There's some resources. We'll send this out, by the way, if you don't have time to get it. So this is our last section before we go into our Q&A. Personal growth, how to build your skills and confidence as a young professional. So, Princess, any advice?
So my main piece of advice is definitely to, first and foremost, just have the audacity and just always go out for all of the job opportunities and kind of roles that you see come towards you that you really feel like you would be benefiting from and kind of be a good candidate for. Because I feel like, especially in my own personal career, I've suffered a lot sometimes with imposter syndrome and feeling that I'm not really good enough to go out for the roles that I do. And in reality, especially if you've kind of really been training up in your craft and you have so many experiences or even transferable skills from jobs that you don't even think would be applicable. Like I used to work in retail and hospitality for many years before I worked in the creative industry, and you'd be shocked how many skills you can actually transfer across. You should always just apply regardless of if you think you'd be able to get it or not, and also never be deterred by the amount of years of experience they might be requiring on the job description, or if they're requiring a certain skill. Definitely with my experience with Caviar, I was very nervous to apply for this role because I thought they kind of needed a lot more senior experience. But I knew I was creative, I had a passion for writing, and I'd done little bits in social before. So I decided to just bite the bullet and apply anyway, and I'm so happy I did, because thankfully they saw something in me, and that's kind of where I got to where I am today. And in the same way, if you kind of see a job opportunity or a role that you think you'd be perfect for, always apply for it anyway. And you, even if the job description might have a certain list of criteria that, you're off the bat, you're like, oh, I'm not really sure if I can do this, or I kind of know about it, but I've never really worked in this kind of skill before. Always apply anyway, because 9 times out of 10, the people who are applying, they actually do think that you'd be the perfect candidate that they're looking for. They might just not know it because of the way they've laid out the job description. So always apply anyway. And they'll always be much more receptive to you being honest and being like, okay, I've got these skills, this kind of knowledge I can bring to the role, but I don't really know about this skill that you're asking for, but I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes in terms of training or research to get up to speed, because they'll value that honesty, because it shows that you're working hard and you're passionate and you want to do a good job.
Absolutely. Samira, advice?
No experience is lost or wasted. You might think you don't have the direct skills that are listed under a job, but you probably do. So just to tell you a little story, like when I was at university, I was part of like an American Football Society, and I had a leadership role as like a game day manager. So I would, manage very big personalities on the team. I would sort out venues where we were playing. I would book coaches. And again, I used to think that that job role or those skills were only applicable to the sports industry. However, now working in film, those skills are extremely transferable. Booking venues, like finding locations, sorting out travel was like sorting coaches, managing big personalities. We've got a lot of big personalities in our directors and heads of departments. So no matter what you're doing, you could like babysit on the weekends. You might be a very great child chaperone or director wrangler. So it really doesn't matter like what it is you do, and you might think it's so small and incremental, but you've definitely learned the skills that can then be applied to production. There's such an array of job roles, like as you've seen that we've gone through, that skills you might not think exactly like a direct link are definitely adaptable. So I think it's about adapting your skills, but also being willing to learn and very eager to learn. I'm someone who always asks a lot of questions. These guys can testify to that. I've spent a lot of time bugging the DIT, which is why I know so much. So just always be eager to learn and don't be afraid to ask questions, but no experience is lost or wasted. Whether it's a good shoot or a bad shoot, there's always different things you can learn and take that to your next opportunity.
That's great advice. Thank you.
I think
Nisha.
you learn more from a bad shoot, actually.
Yeah, definitely learn more from a bad shoot.
I think advice. I don't know if it's my advice. It was something my dad used to always say to me, and I think it was when I was just like, I would just talk for like ever, and he'd be like, Nisha, you don't learn anything when your mouth is open. Can you just listen to what everyone else is saying? And I really, when I first came to London, not that I'm saying don't say a word, but my whole thing was like, listen, absorb, learn, ask questions, but just, surround yourself with people that you can learn a lot from and take a lot in. And even if you don't listen to their advice or take, you've heard it at least. So I think that's a really good piece of advice. And then find mentors, find people that you can relate to, who you feel like they're where you want to be in like 5 years' time or 10 years' time, or just somebody that you kind of see something of yourself in that you can relate to. I mean, Sorcha's been a mentor to me for the last 2 years, which has been amazing. And I think that's really important to find like allies in the industry as well. So that's my other piece of advice.
Thanks, Nish. Don't tell anyone I'm your mentor if you make mistakes. No. Something just to point out very quickly, making mistakes in our industry is literally one of the most important things you can do, just to say, because we all learn from it, so we always do. And Sachin, last piece of advice to round up before our Q&A.
So I know it might sound cliche, but it's not, because I know firsthand that it works. But just honestly, keep pushing, keep developing, keep trying, work on personal projects, try and collaborate with people, go to events, watch what's being made in the industry, read the credits, message them if you like the work, just keep on pushing forward. I think persistency and consistency is key. Once I knew I wanted to leave post-production, it took me 4 years to get into commercial production. But it works, just stick at it. Everything will be fine in the end.
Thank you, Sach. I like that. That's a lovely way to end on. Everything will be fine in the end. So we are going on to our Q&A, possibly. There we go. Any questions? No? You could.
That's good because we're
hello.
Yeah.
Oh. Yay.
This is our deck that's on.
Are you asking who's on next? I'm joking.
Hi there. I was just wondering what you would say to a graduate or you 10 years ago when you're just starting out in the industry. What would be your one piece of advice that you'd give to people who are just starting out? Thank you.
Who wants to take this?
To a graduate?
Yeah.
I don't know what
My bit of advice would be just take, if you don't know what you want to do, which is fine, just do everything. Just take everything that comes your way. Because honestly, it will open so many doors. And things snowball. One thing that I realized, again, when I was transitioning through my career and through different companies, I realized as soon as I got one credit, the door would just open and things just slowly start to snowball. And that just comes from just taking opportunities where you can.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say, even if you have a plan to be here, any opportunity to get you in the door, it's something that Samira has talked about before, like sideways moves. I mean, I started as a runner in photography, and then I just took every opportunity I could. I went to music, and it didn't matter what it was just trying to kind of learn and stuff. And when someone looks at your CV and you've worked in several different things, it's attractive. But when I say that, it doesn't have to be in our industry. When I was working as a runner, I was waitressing in the evening, I was working at a clothes shop on the weekend, and that taught me to be people-facing. It taught me to have confidence. And so genuinely, if I'm going to be honest, the first thing I do before I look at what anyone's education is, I look and see if they've worked in a bar. Because if you've worked in a bar, you can work in our industry. You're dealing with so many different personalities. So I hope that helps. Any other questions? No burning desires for anything?
I do have an answer to just add to that question. So a lot of people think they can't get into the industry because it's inaccessible, or they don't have, a godparent or a dad or someone who works in the industry, which, I didn't, but whether it be indirect, you'll know someone who knows someone who knows someone that was on set one time, or you'll know someone who knows someone that shot a film independently. So don't be afraid to reach out to those contacts, but also, the age of the internet and Instagram, if you like a video, find out who the director is. Like Princess said, we always put the credits, at least we do, but a lot of production companies put the credits in the caption. So message those people. Like one of the great directors of photography we work with, Olan, is so great at mentoring young people who get in touch with him and bringing them on set. So yeah, don't be afraid to send that message or send that DM. Just do it.
I'd like to add, this is quite old school, but I hired one of my members of staff because of this. When we advertise for a job, we get sent so many CVs, and I go through every single one of them, but I'm really looking for something to jump out at me. And we were advertising for a creative researcher role, which also should be one of the more obscure things, which is super fun. Look it up, it's an amazing job. And I kept on going through all these CVs going, I really love all of them, and how do I differentiate which is kind of that special person? And one day the doorbell rang at our office, and this young man came in, and he tripped on my dog's water bowl and was really awkward. I went, hi, I'm applying for the job. And I was a bit like, oh, do we have an interview? He was like, no, I just wanted to drop you my CV. And he had handwritten the package, and I'm a sucker for handwriting. And he got the job because he was the right person for it, but because also he'd gone the extra mile. He took the initiative, and he didn't live in London. He'd come to London for the day, and he was just kind of going around giving out CVs. And that's actually how I've made quite a few great new contacts by them literally sending it in with a handwritten letter, because that will get noticed. And I know it sounds so old school, but it's that personal touch.
Yeah.
Hi.
What would you say to people whose parents might be very unsure about supporting the music industry?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think any of our parents know what we do. Who wants to take this one?
I can.
Yeah?
I can personally tell you that my dad was horrified when I wanted to go into the creative industry, mainly because I guess he grew up in Congo, and when he come over to the UK, he studied to be a solicitor and stuff. So the creative industry was a complete alien world to him, and if anything, he used to tell me off for watching so much TV and consuming so much content. But I knew that I was half watching it because I loved it, but also half watching it because I wanted to study it, I wanted to be part of it, and I also then wanted to go on to write, produce, and kind of be in that world. Sadly, it's always so wonderful when you have family that can kind of support what you want to do and go into it. But I think the most important thing you should always think about is how can I live my life most authentically? And if you have a dream that involves being creative and you don't necessarily have the support, it's always better to kind of ask for forgiveness after you've proved yourself than kind of ask for acceptance at the beginning. And I feel like you should always still go out for it, making sure that you're going about it in like a right way, you're being smart with it. And as we said, one of the amazing things that we've managed to gather is a number of different resources where you can kind of do experience that also gets you paid, which we also highly recommend wherever possible. And I think kind of showing bits like that you're not necessarily just taking a leap of faith, but you're also doing it in a strategic way. And you're like, well, I'm a good writer, so I'm going to try and apply to be, I don't know, a journalist or work in social media and work in industries that you can also then prove to your family are doing well, they're booming. So social media has, I've seen it so many times, transform the lives of small businesses, transform the lives of production companies, and allowed small people with, from small towns, for example, to kind of almost grow themselves into a brand and achieve goals they never thought possible. So I always say go out for it regardless, and I do hope that your family will come around, but if they don't, then I hope that they can at least be proud and respect the work that you do after you get there.
And I'll just very quickly add to that before we wrap it up. I think education is really important. Like I said, my parents still really don't know what I do, and I'm in my 40s. I think it's about sitting down and explaining to them that you can have a very successful career in this, because it's probably the fear of the unknown, I want to thank you all for having us. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your time. Thank you to my incredible team. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.